carriage out here.
Which used to be a very unique feature on the battlefield, but you know, based on that, those cannons represented.
It was an earlier superintendent.
Yeah.
In fact, it was the third superintendent, second superintendent at this point. So you use a broken carriage out here to let you see when you're trying to get your cannons out of here.
And as Colonel Barr said, most of them could not, but conversely, how many Confederate cannons can follow?
Right.
So you're going to lose some Union cannons. But what about all the artillery supporting all those brigades that Colonel Barge talked about that attacked this position? Are they going to be able to get through here either?
Over there too.
No. So you got to keep that in mind as we talk about what happened here.
60 years ago, I remember this. Or better than any part else of the battlefield.
Yeah.
And I'm going to imagine my good friend over there. I remember
Well, as we walk on here through here, folks, this is actually the position of Colonel John Miller's brigade of Negley's division. And as you look at it, seems like a pretty good spot, doesn't it? Get down in those rocks. What happens when Sheridan gives way and goes back through here, followed by Confederates, while you're being attacked from the front and the side?
It's got to infiltrate.
Now you're stuck in a box and you can't move fast. And when you try to get out of here, you are slaughtered. Hence the slaughter pen.
How about how many men?
It's hard to say because they don't report their casualties based on where they were. They report them at the end of the battle. And these guys will become engaged down the line.
Large number there, Jim?
I said to General C.
Yep.
They buy time.
Mm-hmm.
Union lose cannon.
Negley's division.
Sheridan shows he can make men fight.
All right, so, you know, as we're going through the 10 o'clock in the morning, you've got basically, as we talked about, Sheridan's division with its 3 brigades who have been in the game for some time now. By the time they're pushed back into that line of woods where we were standing, they've been fighting for a good couple hours already. And, you know, that's a long time for, you know, a group of men on a Civil War battlefield to be actively engaged for that long. All the while, as we walk down that straight road down there, that was the line of General James Negley connecting up to the left wing of the Union Army. Remember, I think Colonel Barr said that George Thomas only has 2 of his 4 divisions here. The others are up towards Gallatin Way, you know, trying as infantry to try to deal with John Hunt Morgan's raid up into Kentucky. Not very well, I might add. So when Sheridan and Negley get in this pocket, some of Negley's men, knowing those rocks are there, John Miller's brigade in particular, will get in amongst those rocks. Because when you look at them, I asked you as we walked by, does that look a good place to fight from behind?
Where did you put the men up in the rocks?
Huh?
Same time you opened the new route in?
Yeah, just about, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And those are, by the way, me. I am actually a monument on the battlefield now. They took my picture standing and kneeling with my musket, and then they cut it out in steel. Thank God I had not had as many pounds on at the time. Plus, I could ask them to shave some off with a grater if I wanted to. But anyway, so where those guys are, I mean, Miller's men would get in amongst those rocks because they, you know, through the chain of command now, they found out that Rosecrans has basically said to Negley and Sheridan, I'm more or less sacrificing you guys to save the rest of the army. I need you to buy time. And so they get in there. For a while, it works real good. They've got the concealment of the rocks. They've got the cover of the, you know, the concealment of the trees, the cover of the rocks. The Confederates are coming in piecemeal instead of rolling it all at one time. But then as we get towards the noon hour, they come in that concerted assault that Colonel Barrs talked about. And Sheridan's men are the first ones to go. They're running out of ammunition. They have taken the tremendous casualties. 2 of their 3 brigade commanders are already gone. I mean, they have put it all in. And they start heading up through, picking their way through the trees and more rocks behind us that way. And what that means is for Miller's boys and the rest of Negley's division, they're facing out this way, still being attacked this way, also being attacked from the right. And now they've got Confederates coming into their rear. Can you imagine trying, we talked about cannons, can you imagine just getting up yourselves and running through those rocks? It ain't easy. And to compound matters, when the call comes from Negley to retreat, somehow, some way, it doesn't reach John Miller until the very last. And when he gets that command, he mutters something like, well, we're going to stand here and show them how men can die. I'm not sure that actually inspired anybody to do anything. They'll fire a few more volleys, and they have to literally try to pick their way slowly but surely out of those rocks, leaving most of their cannons behind, although Battery G, 1st Ohio, did manage to drag about 3 of its guns off the field here and up through the road that the Pioneers had cut through the Cedars back towards the Nashville Pike, and then they're running a gauntlet of fire back that way. So now the big question that has to be answered as we move up through the open fields along the Nashville Pike and on to the Visitor Center, where we'll stop again and to continue on with this story, is, was this enough time? I mean, I often ask our regular visitors that come here, you guys are too tough of a crowd to do here because you know the Civil War a lot better, but most of our visitors that come here, frankly, barely know the Civil War and probably have never heard of the Battle of Stones River. And so when you think about when Negley's boys finally pull out, you've lost Richard Johnson's division for all intents and purposes, Sheridan's division is more or less out of the game, and you've lost Negley's division. So you've lost essentially 4 of the 8 divisions in the Union Army. They have been beaten. And then I asked the folks, who do you think's winning the battle come about noon, December 31st, 1862? What do you think they say? Confederates, because it sure as heck looks like it. And from the ground, from the perspective of the boys in blue, I'm sure it looks like that too. But it was all about time. They bought a bunch of time here. We talked about this on our bus. Speed, momentum, stay on top of them. That's the only way this battle works. So if Rosecrans is doing what he's supposed to do back there and uses this time wisely, in fact, this is where the Battle of Stones River starts really becoming the Union victory we know it as today. But we have to discover that part of the story at the next stop.
Because of this, Stan, Thomas would be at the staff meeting on the evening of the 31st. Rosecrans and everybody but Thomas is ready to retreat. Thomas is the smartest guy there. He's in a corner, apparently dozing. And when they talk about retreating, Thomas says, we stay here. We stay here. And they will stay here. This is before, remember, this is 9 months before he becomes the Rock of Chickamauga. Now, for Mary's benefit, the Union, out of 42,000 men here, lose more men than McClellan loses at Antietam. But it's a 2-day battle here, and General Bragg will lose more men here than General Lee loses at Antietam. But you are clever up there, and you say 1 day. But if you're percentage-wise, percentage is the most important. So you can see the percentage of casualties in Stones River of 42,000 Yanks versus 83,000 Yanks at Antietam. You got a better chance of being a casualty here.
1 in 3.
If you're in Bragg's army, you got a better chance of being a casualty here than Bobby Lee has in Bobby Lee's army. This percentage-wise, this is the bloodiest battle of a major battle in the Civil War. Cold Harbor, 12,000 Union casualties, 800 Confederate casualties. Child's play to this. Ready to get aboard the bus?
Hit it. We'll go right down that trail and get drive our tour road on towards the visitor center. And as we're going to be basically following the route of the remnants of Negley's boys and Miller's brigade, as some of them would escape up the road that we kind of saw at the head of the parking lot, McFadden Lane, which is called Van Cleve Lane today. Others would actually try to escape through a route that is sort of a mystery, but I have my own opinions on it. The Pioneer Brigade, one of the battalions, actually cut a corridor through the woods, running behind the Union positions from north to south from the Nashville Pike through the Cedars. And the road we're on now, which is has been part of our tour road since the park was created in 1927, and was actually on older maps a road that existed at least from the time, not from before during the Civil War, but from the times of the African American freedmen's community that grew up in and around this area here along the battlefield. There was a road featured here. What I'm feeling like is after the pioneers got done with this battle and there was a corridor here, you know, it took a while for Mother Nature to start to reclaim it, and as the freedmen's community develops, it was already partially a road, so it kind of became a road again. Then it was there by the time the battlefield is created as a park, and so I think we're driving on that pioneer road. Now, I can't prove it for a fact because there's not a single map that shows where they are. The descriptions don't give us enough detail to tell it, but this would put you going right behind the Union lines, allowing troops at least to move back and forth and try to, move reinforcements if necessary. Now, when we emerge from these trees like the Union soldiers did, it'll be kind of moving through a big open field with a tree line far off to our left, the Nashville Pike to our right, and the railroad farther up on a rise of ground beyond that. And this is where the battle will come to a head, because Rosecrans has built his new line of defense more or less right along the line that we'll be driving on this road as we make our left-hand turn coming away from tour stop number 3 up here ahead. And also, as we pass through here, you're going to see on your right and left a lot of downed trees and stuff. This is still scars left on the battlefield from the 2009 Good Friday F4 tornado that ripped through here. Knocked down thousands of trees. Actually made the battlefield look like it just got fought on a battlefield. Although I generally do not recommend using a tornado as a cultural landscape management tool. But I have been able to look at a tornado as it's coming towards you from my bucket list. Okay? So here we are. You can see out now as we head out front here, and moving here slightly to the left, this is the area where the battle will come to a real head on the afternoon of December 31st, 1862. And you can just kind of drive along slow. Now, the anchor point of that line, Ed mentioned it, over there to the right, across the way from us, that clump of trees across the road, it does have a tour stop lot, but we ain't getting 2 buses in there, no way, no how, is the Round Forest. And that position is held at the beginning of the day by Colonel William B. Hazen, and when the day is over, after the 4 successive attacks by 6 Confederate brigades in total, he will still be there. In fact, they will be the only Union troops that did not take a step backwards on December 31st, 1862, and they provide the anchor point, beating back those attacks in the fields to the east that would later become known as Hell's Half Acre, to allow the line to come across the road, swing around, and basically follow the direction we're going now, continuing on down the Nashville Pike for about 2 miles, and curving around the other side, making a giant elongated horseshoe with interior lines. And backing up this line of infantry, you can see the cannons up there next to the cemetery. We also have a gun in the cemetery. Cannon silhouettes all over the place up there. A Confederate looking out of the trees over there, if he counted cannon muzzles across the way on the high ground up towards the railroad, would count 38 Union cannons. And when he turned back in the woods to see how many of his big guns were coming to help him out, how many do you think he saw?
None.
0. You can't get cannons through those woods and rocks.
Is Hazen across the railroad?
Yes, he actually drapes across the railroad. Turn right, because it's a one-way road.
See now.
Yeah. And actually what we'll do here is we'll swing off into this parking area right here. And that'll put us pretty close to the visitor center, right next to tour stop 4, where we're going to talk next. All right, so we're going to pull off into this bus parking area here, folks. And then let me, you can start getting off, but don't fly away. I want to see if Colonel Bars wants to do his talk over here first and then let you go to the visitor center. Or does anybody really have to take a potty break or anything? Raise your hand. Okay. So I'll ask him if maybe we can send you out. We'll give you a time to kind of gather back here over at this.
Union are constructing a new defense line along the Nashville Pike, which we have the heavy traffic moving on. It runs from northwest to southeast. The cemetery is on higher ground. The cemetery is north of the turnpike. The cemetery will be in this area right here. There you have you have Scribner's Brigade, lots of artillery. So you're cobbling together a new line in the cemetery and extending initially along Asbury Lane. Now, the biting in is over where we were. Sheridan has fallen back, and Rosecrans is forming a new line of resistance along the line of the Nashville Pike. Here we have the Border Trade Battery and the Pioneer Brigade. On the right of them, you're going to have Charlie Harker, Price, and Fife's brigades. Going this way, you're going to have Gross's brigade, and then you're going to come down here to Round Forest, where we're going next. And there, Hazen has formed his brigade, 4 regiments, and they're facing. When we're there, they're going to be facing with their right flank extending across the Nashville Turnpike and their left flank anchored on the railroad, standing looking this way with a battery of artillery, and the Confederates are coming toward them. And the Confederates are going to attack them 6 times, and they're going to be repulsed 6 times. Because Breckinridge is going to commit his division piecemeal. 4 brigades will cross, and we'll talk about that when we get down to Round Forest. Think of a bowling ball. I throw a fast ball down the alley. On my right is a railroad. On my left is the Nashville Pike. And I'm sending this bowling ball. Think of the 10 pins or Hazen's brigade. And they're going to be the first attack against them is going to be by Chalmers's men around 11 o'clock. Chalmers ain't going to move them. Chalmers is going to get wounded. And then they're going to send the brigade commanded by Palmer's brigade. Palmer is a former mayor, and they're going to come right down that road again about 2 o'clock, and they're going to come up against Hazen's men, who have been reinforced by Haskell, and the Confederates are going to have the by Jesus beaten out of them as they fall back. Now, Bragg is going to decide. He's very fixed in his mind. He is going to believe he can break the Union line at the Round Forest. So he's going to tell General Breckinridge, who is over here on the other side of the Stones River, bring your men over, and I'm going to throw them in piecemeal. He doesn't say that, but that's what he's going to do them. Successively, between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, he's going to send Preston's brigade. He is going to send Gibson's brigade. He's going to send these various brigades coming down there. This man has a better map here. He's going to send, here you can see where Hazen is. Hazen is right.
This one might be the
Hazen is right here.
Hazen is right there.
And he's going to send them successfully down here. And here they're going to come. Adams. Adams gets the bejesus knocked out of him. Then Jackson will go. He'll get the S knocked out of him. Then another brigade will go, Palmer's brigade. Every brigade Breckinridge has will advance up here with their right flank resting on the railroad, their left work on the pike, and the brigades will each of them be repulsed in turn. Meanwhile, over here, the Confederates sweep across Asbury Lane, as you can see. Their goal at 4:30. No, let's go for it. 4:30. Their goal at 4:30 is to reach the Nashville Pike. There you have Bushrod Johnson. There you've got St. John Liddell. And they think they're damn good. They've already repulsed Rains. Rains is dead. Vance is leading his brigade. Ector has been thrown back as they attack into here where we are right now. So the Confederates are being exhausted. Now, as I say, Davis had ordered Stevenson's division to Vicksburg. 8,000 men. They arrive at Vicksburg where only one brigade will be involved. Now, I would say if they were here, Bragg would have used them the same way because he's very inflexible. He would have used the men under Stevens' brigade just the same as he does Breckinridge's division and the brigades before them, Chalmers. And they will not gain an inch. And of course, the Confederates are not going to win here. But we'll go down and particularly we want to stand in Round Forest. Anything tomorrow? Are we going back to the earthworks?
We had talked about that.
Are we going to the earthworks?
Buses in there?
Are we going to the earthworks before we go to Round Forest?
You want to go see them because they're open. And you want to go see them? They're open. The story we're doing now, but when the fighting starts coming to a close on December 31st, 1862. And if we could mostly stay on the trail, we don't like, these are actually original earthworks, so we don't try not to walk on top of them. The two armies had basically fought most of what we've been talking about other than the cover that Mother Nature had provided them, like in the slaughter pen, right out in the wide open. They start to think better of that during the evening of December 31st, 1862. And particularly the men of the Pioneer Brigade, because they're a little better situated than almost any other soldier on the battlefield to do something about not having much cover, because they've got the tools. But it will not only just be the pioneers that begin working on a series of earthworks in this area where they were covering, and they don't really write much about exactly, no maps show where they laid these things out. They don't write about them much except to talk about kind of, digging in that, during the evening of the 31st through January 1st and even into January 2nd. I expect these ones here survive because they were probably a little stouter than ones you could scrape out with bayonets and plates and things like that a lot of the other fellas had to do, piling up fence rails, and the Confederates would use rocks and fallen trees in the woods to do the same thing. But the upshot is, by the time you get to the end of January 1st, 1863, these guys are already prepping for World War I. We've got trench lines, no man's land. And the whole stretch of the Nashville Pike, where this battle had come to pretty close to its bloody climax on December 31st, 1862, and was certainly really on its way to becoming the Union victory that we know it as today, nobody could really stomach the idea of now coming up over those nice comfy things you're hiding behind and moving forward to engage the enemy who's hiding behind his own stuff on the other end. So in part, that's going to kind of shift the fighting away from this sector of the battlefield and move us over to the story that we'll tell when we get to the last stop here within Stones River National Battlefield, which is the the McFadden Farm and the fort across the river. Now, one this little interesting side story, you really want to know why these earthworks are still here? Because when I first got here, this was not part of the park. There was a fence that went right along that trail there. We, in our infinite wisdom, put up a sign that says, oh, there's infantry trenches over there, but we didn't control the property, so God knows, how much metal detecting and stuff. But they would have gone crazy. Because when we finally did get this property, and I go to look at it, you know what was inside that ditch there? Trash. Now, normally I'm not a big fan of litter on the battlefield. But in this case, what did the trash do? It actually preserved some of the form of the earthwork. So a couple Eagle Scout projects and 2.5 dumpsters later, I still got stuff coming up out of the ground, by the way. But this is what you end up having. And then what we decided as part of the, the big redo of the park and the tour road is, we know not a lot of people get a chance to spend as much time as we're spending in the battlefield. Our average visitor maybe has about an hour. But we want them to get a sense of artillery was important in the battle, that there was actually fortifications used during the battle and afterwards as well, and just give them a sense of the battle. Just leave the visitor center, take a quick walk around this trail, and if all you got is 30, 40 minutes, you still get a sense of the battle, the park, and what we have to offer, and maybe you come back and explore it a little better later on. So this has turned out to be a great boon for us, having this particular spot. We see visitors going around and around this thing all the time. They really enjoy this spot, and it's a great place for them to see a little kind of side story, but also part of the bigger story.
Jim, I don't think that the Park Service had acquired the land when you arrived here.
No, I was telling them. No.
They did not. There was a linear, there is the Nashville Pike. The Confederates get their hold, and at the Nashville Pike, the Union Army will go up the spout. Now, there's the Nashville Pike. Watch those cars passing. Now, this linear track, not over 100 yards in width, probably 300 yards in depth, is acquired from a black family and the Park Service really took no interest in these earthworks until after they acquire this property, which is probably in my memory about 25 years ago. Because Jim has been here, he has told you how long he's been here, but they did not own, they had already acquired the property when he arrived. And that's when they discover, doing clearance, that these earthworks are there. And under Jim's leadership, and with his time here, they opened that trail here. They cleared out the earthworks and revealed this very important place. At West Point, they did not teach using earthworks or when you graduated. You were engineers. You were not combat leaders when you graduated from West Point. You thought anybody that dug trenches, there's something wrong with him. He doesn't have the esprit. Anyway, Napoleon did not use earthworks. And now they've developed the rifled musket. And now you're in deep SHIT if you advance elbow touching elbow. Now, who realizes that? It's learned at Shiloh the hard way. And it's learned from the bottom up. The men that do most of the killing and die are enlisted men. So they will be the ones that will force the officers to go to something they thought was not usable. They were thinking about, when they were armed with a smoothbore musket, that if I shot at you at 75 yards, you're unlucky if I hit you. If I hit you at at 100 yards, I'm very lucky because a smoothbore musket is effective only about at 50 yards. In fact, the most important battle in the North American continent until the Civil War is the Battle of Quebec. Wolfe tells his men as he lines them up elbow to elbow, don't fire till I give the order. And he's going to give the order to fire when the French are 45 yards away. And 2 volleys are going to decide who controls North America, the French or the British. Because when they fire this 2 volleys at a 50-yard range, the French break and flee back into the walls of Quebec and on the plains of Abraham. That strategy of firing at the French come forward in a charge and firing at them at 45 yards is going to take all the fight out of the French. And all they're going to think about is how we can get back inside the walls of Quebec. So you see a big thing that's changed. Now the idea, the entrenching, as he says, this is a sergeant and the marshal is a captain. Marshal says, oh hell, don't be a wimp. Move forward, elbow to elbow. He secretly going to tell all his men, don't listen to that son of a bitch. You better dig trenches. That's what they're doing here. By 1864, neither army will move without entrenching. If you entrench and give you a day to dig entrenchments, you are going to learn a bitter lesson. That lesson that U.S. Grant learned at the Wilderness, at Spotsylvania, at Cold Harbor, and at Petersburg. You cannot get men by Petersburg to charge men who are entrenched. On the 18th day at Petersburg, the Army of the Potomac won't advance. They tell them to advance, and they hug the ground because they know it's death. The only guys that advance are these guys in the heavy artillery who have never been under fire before, and they're going to learn the hard way. They are going to charge the Confederates who are dug in, and the 1st Maine Artillery will have the honor of losing the most men in battle of any regiment in the Civil War. Out of a little over 700 men, they're going to lose 650 men. That's a bitter lesson to learn. And after that, Grant decides, I ain't going to attack breastworks anymore. If I do, Mr. Lincoln ain't going to win the election. Mark my word. And after that, Grant will only attack the Confederate Army when he gets them in the open. So this is very important, and I was very delighted. And you have to give this man the applause because the marshal was really never took my pictures up until General Rise here and these earthquakes.
All right, so now we're going to make an attempt to stop at the Round Forest. A couple of caveats, though. The only way...
I've oriented the map. There is north, and here is Hill's Half Acre, right out in front of us here. And here is Hazen's brigade and Haskell's brigade, right standing about 50 yards in front of us, with their right flank south of the Nashville Turnpike, their left flank anchored on the railroad. And here they're going to stand till dusk and not give an inch. They'll be reinforced by other regiments, but the Union will hold this line till dusk. The Confederates will throw 6 successive brigades against this area. and the 6th Brigade will all be repulsed. It shows that Bragg has tunnel vision. His tunnel vision is if he can crush the Union line here at this angle, he can win the battle. And he's going to try 6 successive brigades, beginning about 11 o'clock, are going to attack here and be repulsed. Hazen is going to be reinforced. Now, Hazen is one tough fellow. If he had had his way, Custer would have never graduated from West Point because he's commandant of cadets. And on the day Custer is going to graduate, on the 22nd day of June, Custer forgets duty, honor, and country. There's a fight between 2 cadets, and Custer doesn't turn them in. Hazen wants the son of a bitch turned in and kicked out of West Point. But Custer luck holds good. June 22nd, the Battle of Manassas, 30 days away. So he survived. They do not boot him out of West Point. So Custer's luck has survived for the first time. And Hazen will never forgive him because he used the system to beat Hazen. Hazen wanted him booted out of West Point. But if they had not had a crisis, he would have been booted out. Custer would not have graduated from West Point. So, but that's just a little bit more about Hazen. One tough SOB. He'll be tough in his personal life, as you can tell with his experience with Custer, a tough soldier, and a valuable asset to have. And he will make use of men from Cruft's brigade, Gross's brigade, men from Haskell's brigade to give his men a break. And the Confederates attack piecemeal and are defeated piecemeal and will not gain an inch. On the evening of the 31st and the 1st, the Union will readjust their lines and the Confederates will occupy Round Forest. But the critical moment has passed. We'll let our friend up here, and anytime Jim Ogden wants to come in, let him. We'll go up here to the Hazen Monument here. Now, everybody thought they were going to be, they disassembled this monument back almost 50 years ago. And they were thinking they were going to find great things in it. And you can tell them what they find out.
Yeah, and what we still don't know.
But I think they're still in storage.
No, they're on display in the museum.
Back in the monument. They don't know how to spell Chickamauga and Skidmore, fellas.
No, they don't. In fact, so what happens after the fighting is over, Colonel Hazen and particularly his men in the 9th Indiana Infantry are so pleased with themselves that they decide that, in these 6 months intervening between the Battle of Stones River and the Tullahoma campaign, they will quarry the local limestone and build this monument you see here behind me on top of the brigade cemetery. Keeping in mind, y'all may think there's actually bodies underneath these graves here. We've actually done ground penetrating radar. Actually, there's a trench right here. There's a trench over there, and there's a long trench over here. That's actually where all the soldiers are buried. The markers were laid long after Hazen and his men had gone on to Chickamauga, Chattanooga, on down through the Atlanta campaign. In fact, the monument itself was clear of any markings. Hazen, then a general, will hire 2 soldiers of the 115th Ohio Infantry, who are sitting here manning the blockhouses along the railroad, to come on out and chisel in inscriptions. And what he wanted to have ultimately was inscriptions for the Battle of Stones River, the Battle of Shiloh, and the battles of Chattanooga, and including Chickamauga, even though that's in Georgia, to kind of cover all the affairs that his brigade served in, and served in very well, in the state of Tennessee. Now, if you look very closely, actually, the markings on the two Stone River sides and the Shiloh side, and actually you will find the picture on the web, by the way, that has a picture of the Shiloh side and says this dang monument is Shiloh. At Shiloh. But boy, I gave Stacy Allen over there an earful. I said, this is your doing, isn't it? Now you're stealing my monument. I mean, I don't have much, but, you know, I do have the Hazen Brigade monument, for God's sakes. The least you can do is leave me that. You know, we're not Shiloh after all. If you look over here, though, the carvings are different. These were probably not done by those two fellows in the 115th Ohio. They may have been contracted later. We haven't really yet been able to determine who did this. And yes, as Ed pointed out, their spelling skills stink. They can't spell Chickamauga or Chattanooga correctly. So apparently this was done on the fly. Those two soldiers, though, down off the Stones River Greenway, a place I was thinking of taking you all, but then I was told that would be too devastating. And yes, there are pictures of it in the Blue and Gray magazine next to the maps. They actually went down to the river one day, I guess, to have lunch. They brought their tools with them and then carved their names into the rock. And then later on, some 20th century hoodlums came and painted over the top of it. Oh, okay, wait a minute. Which is worse, the first vandalism or the vandalism that came later? Really, 100 years from now, that paint might be something somebody gives a credit about. So, just saying. I mean, I was a little upset too, and actually we were working with the city trying to get them to go down and clean it up. Eventually, I'm just going to take some of our stuff on my own and go do it myself. As Ed said, this monument, for a while, we styled it as the oldest intact Civil War monument in the nation. However, we have discovered that there is a monument on a town square in Connecticut that was commissioned and laid and placed on the square before the Hazen Brigade monument arrived, and it is still intact. So we can't say that anymore. It is still the oldest one on the battlefield, though, so to that. Okay? Intact, though, is tough. I mean, this thing is made out of the local limestone. The mortar starts to go away. There are some pictures of this thing that looks like it's about to fall over. Finally, we got to what we did. The capstone was leaking very badly. They took the thing apart course by course. About this high on me, the thing was filled with dirt. They actually found, you know, in the dirt, they would find little bits of shell and bullets and stuff like that. But around about this high on me, they actually did find something that could have got in there by accident. They found two rifle barrels, one an Austrian rifle and one a .69 caliber smoothbore. They found three smoothbore projectiles, a 6-pounder, and Napoleon, two 6-pounders and a Napoleon, and they found three different types of rifle shells, two of which were definitively Confederate. So, and again, none of the men in the 9th Indiana write about building the monument, but I haven't found a single thing yet that tells anything about the time capsule that's inside of here. They're pretty quiet on that. So, you know, people have looked at it and said, does it represent lines? You know, where the stuff is laid out? Is it some kind of map? Your guess is as good as ours. We still don't know what exactly it means, other than I think that it is actually stuff that they gathered from Hell's Half Acre, stuff that was used against them at this battle and placed inside, which leaves the question of one other object that was in there. A long, rotten piece of a cedar staff. In the Confederate Veteran, there are two articles that claim that there were Mississippi soldiers who had been sent off and quarantined for smallpox, forced to give up their rifles to other men, came back from their quarantine just as the battle was about to be going. Those other men weren't giving up those muskets and were given cartridge boxes and told to cut sticks to carry at shoulder arms and wait for weapons to become available during Chalmers' attack. Now, normally, with something, even two articles coming out of the Confederate Veteran, I would say, yeah, you know, the fish is about this big. But then you think about that piece of wood. And you think about Hazen's men after this battle going out and burying not only their own, but the Confederate dead out there. The idea of the monument is starting to come into play. When they think about what they're going to put in this monument, do you think they might put something in there that's, you know, that represents the dead fellows they found out there clutching sticks? It's not definitive, but boy, it makes you think. Now, I know what I would do with that stick if somebody handed it to me, but we do have ladies in the audience, so I'm not going to say what it is. Now, some of you asked about our two graves on the outside there. You know, one of the most popularly asked questions until we put that wayside in over there as people came into the visitor center because they used to pass by this way and they were kind of freaking out. They didn't know whether they had taken the right turn, so they would pull in here first because they saw cannons. So this has got to be right. They would come in the visitor center and say, what the heck did those two guys do to get kicked out of the cemetery? Well, in fact, those two guys are not part of Colonel William B. Hayes' brigade. The man in front is Sergeant William Holland of the 111th United States Colored Infantry, that group that was building the National Cemetery in 1865 into 1866. The other fella is his grandson who served in World War I. William Holland, after his service in the military working on the cemetery, became a civilian contractor and also took to farming and purchased that piece of property. Now, William, before the war, was owned property just south of Columbia, Tennessee. He had gained his freedom by running away as the Union Army took over the areas of Middle Tennessee. And then when the war was over, he wasn't going back home because that's actually a crime scene. He and most of the 111th actually stay right here as part of that freedmen's community I mentioned on the bus coming down through the tour road. When he dies, he is eligible to be buried in the National Cemetery both as a soldier of the Civil War and as a worker in the cemetery, because in the early stages the superintendents and some of the contractors and workers were allowed to be buried there. But he chose to be buried over there. Why? And this is the moral of the entire story we're telling these 4 days.
Because you're black and this is a white city.
No, because he came into this world as somebody else's property. And by God, because he is now going out of it a property owner, he's going to be buried on his own property. And that, if you're looking for a reason for all of this, there it is right over there. That's all I got to say about that.
Now, Hazen's men construct the monument. It will be completed by June '63. And so it is disassembled when one of my colleagues' predecessors was a historian here. And they thought they were going to find a lot of interesting stuff inside. They found, I think, a rusty bayonet and a cannonball. They found not any great objects inside the monument when they disassembled it or repainting it about 40 years ago. So they were kind of disappointed. They thought they'd find maybe something real interesting in it, but they didn't. General Rosecrans, late on the spurs, because Bragg is not very observant. On the morning of the 1st, on the morning of the 2nd, Bragg will find that General Rosecrans has sent 3 brigades across Stones River. In fact, I can see the water. The people down there where you are can see the bridge going across Stones River. See that car? They're going across Stones River. So, what they will do, General Beatty will cross Stones River down at McFadden's Ford. Now, keep holding your map like this, because most of you have this map. And they're going to cross at McFadden's Ford. They're going to take position on a ridge, a transverse ridge that is going to run perpendicular to the river. And there you're going to have Beatty's division. You're going to have on the right, you're going to have the brigade commanded by General Price. Colonel Price, on his left, they're going off in a northeasterly direction. On Price's left will be Livingston's battery from the state of Wisconsin. And on the battery's left will be Fife's brigade, mostly from Ohio. In support, you're going to have Grider's brigade. See where Grider is? He is in support to Price and Fife. Then north of us here, north of the short bend in the river, is a brigade commanded by Colonel Gross. So you have 4 Union brigades on the far side of the river. And in this area, you have 37 cannons. On this high ground where you are standing here. All the deciduous trees' leaves have been shed. So you have no trouble for visibility. 2 more batteries are down near the extreme Union left, where you can see Haskell. These have 12 guns, and they are pointing this way too. Now Bragg gets nervous. He gets nervous because he's afraid the Union will use these cannons to unhinge his new line. You can see his new line is here. And he decides the river is rising, it's continued to rise, and maybe he is going to get trapped on the west side of Stones River. If these crossings spread out and Bragg is on this side, unless his men are 10 feet tall, they're not going to get across the ford. He still hopes to win a battle. Now we're going to bring in General Morgan. Now one of the reasons that Rosecrans took the offensive when he did is because Forrest had left on the 9th and is still in East and West Tennessee. General Morgan, who has been north to within 20 miles of Louisville, is on his way back. And he's crossing the Green River. And there he's going to hear the artillery open here, 120 miles away. He's going to hear the guns open fire here. So General Bragg's orders to General Breckinridge, I want you to deploy your men. Now the men that took place in the attack on Route Forest are back on this side of the river. And he tells General Breckinridge, I want you to deploy your men forward of Wayne's Hill. Where you can see Cobb's artillery, that's where the country club house is. So if you want to go to the country club, you can pretend you're Colonel Cobb. Then he deploys 4 brigades. Hanson's brigade, the Orphan Brigade, is on the left, in low ground, with the ground sloping up to a former wheat field, up to where Price is. You can see him there. Gideon Pillow, that great general who we met yesterday, that coward that deserted his men. He's come back to duty. He's now commanding troops. So he will take over the brigade that will be commanded by General Palmer, Colonel Palmer, the previous day. Palmer is the former mayor of Murfreesboro. So Pillow will take position on the left of Hanson. Hanson is so irate. He tells General Breckinridge, I'm going to Bragg's headquarters and I'm going to shoot the son of a bitch. They talk him out of it. He probably would have been just as well, because he's going to get killed in the attack. But they have to practically restrain him, because he thinks it's such a poor idea. He's going to go into Bragg's headquarters and bang! And that's the end of you, General Bragg. Hanson is a portly man. His brigade had not fought on the last day of the old year. They're the Orphan Brigade. What is the Orphan Brigade? They can't go home. because the Yankees control Kentucky. And if you go home to see your mom and the kids, or worse, your girlfriend who's pining for you, those Yankees will arrest you. And then supporting Hanson's brigade will be the Louisiana Brigade, commanded by Colonel Gibson. Bragg has a long time hate for Gibson. At the Battle of Shiloh, he'll call Gibson an arrant coward when his brigade has been repulsed 4 times attacking Round Forest. And on Gibson's right will be Preston's brigade. He's going to support him with Semple's battery, 4 12-pounder Napoleons. And at 4 o'clock, the Confederate artillery is going to open fire. And that's going to be, when they fall silent, that's going to be the signal for Breckinridge to advance. Any questions? We will now walk down the road. We'll walk down the road. That bend down there, see the sharp bend in the river. See that sharp bend? That's right down there. There is the bend. We're near the right flank of Ryder's brigade. Only they're going to be up on that high ground. The Union troops are on that ridge line we can see to our right. Ryder will be the closest to the river. In front of Ryder, with the right flank touching the river, downstream about 300 yards from here, will be where the right flank of Price's brigade touches the river. See it? On Price's right is Fight. Out in front of them is Livingston's battery. North of them, beyond where that bend in the river takes place, that man can see the bend a lot better, will be where you have men from Gross's brigade. Well, things start well for the Confederates. And they come forward. As you can see them advancing, see those arrows, and what are you going to see? The Yankees are running! Those cowardly sons of bitches are running! You can see those arrows? They're getting out of there as fast as they can. So right now, it looks like the Confederates are making a good move. They've got Price and Beatty running. They've got Ryder's men coming down that bank, getting to try to get across the creek here before they are captured or killed or wounded. The rebels are letting off rebel yells. Livingston will lose some of his guns as they abandon their position. So the rebels advance, and they're going to drive the Union troops across Stones River right here. You're winning right now if you're the rebels. In fact, if you're in Gibson's Louisiana Brigade, some of you are actually going to cross the river 300 yards south of us. But there are lots of Yankees. There's 37 cannon along that ridge where we were. What's going to happen when you start down? Because there are no trees there. The Union artillery are going to open first with explosive shell, then spherical case, and then canister. And in this area where we're standing here, no rebel is going to get across the river. No rebel is going to reach the gun line. And here we got Union troops coming. There is Hazen. Remember that son of a bitch? We met him back at back at Round Forest. You're going to see other Yankees coming up. You see Negley's brigade division coming up. So there's a Union counterattack. And what looked like a Confederate victory, by 4:30 is turning into a disaster. Not a financial disaster, but a type of disaster that is permanent. And they're going to launch a counterattack. And the Confederates will soon be heading for Wayne's Hill, where they started from, having lost 1,700 men of the 4,000 they sent forward. Having got the big move, the Union, like Hazen and some of the braver Yankees, says, let's pursue the bastards, follow them across the river, capture their cannon, and send them retreating. That's what they do. 3 Confederate cannons fall into rebel Union hands. But it's getting late. Rosecrans becomes conservative, and they maybe could have swept Breckinridge's division into eternity. But Rosecrans orders a halt in the pursuit. So Breckinridge's attack has failed. Undoubtedly, before he dies, Anson probably says, why didn't you let me shoot that son of a bitch? And maybe the attack wouldn't take place. Because when they call him up, he decides he goes back to his command and he's not going to kill Bragg. So the Confederates bed down. The Federals will be reinforced. The rain continues. The river is rising. And on the night of the 4th and 5th, the Confederates are going to recross Stones River and retreat southward to Shelbyville. When they give up the field, who's won the battle? The Federals. They've come off, they've been down for the count of 9 several times on the last day of the old year, but they've then got off the map. Undoubtedly encouraged when Thomas keeps waking up and says, smartest man at a staff meeting, he dozes through it, says we stay here. And finally, he carries the day, and they stay. And they've won a victory. And there will not be another big battle until the campaign opens on the 23rd day of June. The campaign that is going to maneuver Bragg out of his jock strap and give the Union forces General Bragg to fall back behind the Tennessee River. So we have Stones River. Percentage-wise, sorry, Mary.
I'm back here.
More bloody contest than Antietam. Because you have only 37,000 Confederates, 42,000 Yankees. And they're going to have larger losses over the 3 days as the Feds and the Yankee Confederates together are going to have an Antietam one day. So you can